think that we need to think about big principles. The big principle in my mind is that the community has a right to serve and protect itself. And any legitimacy that a police department has is only given to it as a representative of the people who are serving and protecting themselves. That's not what I see in St. Louis. That's not what I see in the metropolitan area. That's not what the country sees when they look at us, and that's not what any of us sees when we look back at the country. And so this revolution that started in Ferguson and which is being heard around the world has really got to be listened to. People are questioning the legitimacy of the police. They're questioning the legitimacy of the people who govern them, who support a repressive system. And I really hope that the language and the voices of the people who are speaking from Ferguson and from the parts of the city that you often don't hear from, I hope those voices are really heard and that we can really start to develop some kind of people's police department. Thanks.
Montague Simmons.
Montego. He said Montague.
Thank you. My name is Montego Simmons. I'm the chair of the Organization for Black Struggle. I also stand with the Don't Shoot Coalition and the movement that's become Hands Up United. A lot of what initially I'd planned to say to you, thankfully, has been said. I don't think I can talk about the policy any better than John's laid out for you right now. But I do want to insist that you do take a broader look at this moment and take note of the emotions that are actually present in this room, the presence of those who actually came early this morning and those who are actually willing to devote an entire day to be here. What we saw in Ferguson was not just about the municipality of Ferguson. It was not just about St. Louis County Police. It was not just about those small municipalities. Like so many others, I grew up here. I grew up in Normandy. I've been working with OBS for more than 10 years, and our work has been primarily centered dead here in the city. We worked hand in hand with Alderman Kennedy for civilian review. And until the uprisings that took place in Ferguson, this conversation didn't take the serious note in public discourse that it's taken now. And the experiences that have been talked about today were my experiences growing up. I was a child at 12 years old walking home from school who'd be pulled over walking with a book bag, spread eagle on the ground, contents of my bag thrown out. Not because I'd actually done anything, but solely for the course of walking. We have more than 12 years of data showing people of color are more likely to be stopped, searched, and arrested on a consistent basis. We've got the data for it. You've seen the cases. He's running off names of people who've been murdered, and no one's willing to take a very serious look at transforming the department. Like John, I believe not only in local control, but in democracy from the ground up. I believe in the people's ability to transform both our communities and our government, and that through elected office, you have the power to actually do that. But as you've seen within the county, where we're not finding the will, we have to demand outside intervention. If you aren't willing to do this, we are ready also to call for the city of St. Louis to be investigated by the Department of Justice. I mean, honestly, this is something that we've been pushing for beyond my tenure, for more than a generation, for someone to take seriously the way that Black and brown communities are treated here. The array of police powers that we saw waged directly against people, and for some of us who are actually out there feeling the tear gas, feeling what a flashbang grenade is when the flames are coming down on top of you, that's something that a couple of months ago you couldn't have paid me to believe it was possible. We're at a moment not only of revolution, but of transformation. This is a moment where we have to stop and make a choice. Will we continue to resist change and transformation and talk about it in an abstract as though it doesn't really affect the way we do business going forward? Will we allow folks like this morning? I was really disheartened by the tone that the chief took. I can't say I was surprised, but just by your willingness to go ahead and have the conversation today, and let alone open it up for this session, for public discourse, there was, okay, is this a window where we're gonna see something different? And nothing in his tone showed that. Nothing in the way that they've continued to engage people has shown that. Nothing in the continuing reports that we're seeing of increased hostility in their engagement with people shows that a difference is occurring. If the will isn't shown by this body, the will have to be shown by this body. They're going to continue doing what they're going to do. We're going to continue to organize and lift up the voice for justice. We're going to continue to engage folks and demand more. But you have the opportunity to make this something different, to actually make that stop on a dime and say, we have to do something different. These relationships cannot continue to exist as they are. We can't continue to fund things going forward. I know people who are with us who actually existed in the city, and initially when he put out the call and said, okay, we're gonna not engage in the joint process and not participate with what's going on because it's a shock to conscience, we said, wow, maybe something different is about to happen. And then only a matter of days later, they reversed course. And they were right there with a busload of 50 police officers. This is gonna take more than good faith that Chief Dotson's gonna do the right thing. It's gonna take something very different from you, and as you've seen, the people are constantly there to see that something different occurs. This is your opportunity to do more, and we would honestly love to see you take this opportunity to transform the way our relationship goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Tori Russell.
They had to leave.
You had to leave? Okay. Teff? He's gone as well. David Flores?
Hi, good afternoon. My name's David Narrett Flores. I live in the 7th Ward. First, I want to talk about the concept of privilege, which has been brought up a lot. So I have privilege. I have privilege as a son of a biracial marriage for a Mexican American and Caucasian. That some people in I will not experience what some people in my community will experience of aggressions from the police. And some examples of that is that comes from the events that we've seen in Ferguson and in our community around that. I remember in August, after spending some time in Ferguson and then driving home. I was driving home to Lafayette Square, and I could do that. And that's weird, and that's uncomfortable. But we have to acknowledge that some of us have privilege, and that we can run away and we can hide from the stuff that is happening to our other community members and to our brothers and sisters, or we can address it and can work to change that. And with that, I think that we're at an opportunity to do that, and I think that this Board of Aldermen should be at an opportunity to do that, to reprioritize where our definitions of public safety are. I think it was mentioned earlier by Dotson himself that, police are not mental health providers. They aren't. They're not, and nor are they our school teachers, and nor are they our doctors, and no, they are not our judge, jury, and executioners in the middle of the street. And we need to remember that. But unfortunately, for far too long, we've been building a system that has encouraged that instead of tearing that down. We've been allowing power of lethal force and righteous shootings and righteous justified killings to go on by our police for way too long. And those that are affected by that are speaking up and need to be heard, and those that have privilege that don't have to experience that need to step back and let others lead. We don't need more police militarization. We don't need police with sniper rifles and military grade vehicles in our city. That is not public safety. We don't need a surveillance system, including a real-time intelligence center, so that they can continue to terrorize our communities and build anxiety, social mistrust, and depression for all of our community members, especially our brown and black communities. What we do need is that we need to reprioritize public safety and investing in mental health programs. Not mental health programs that the police can provide, but mental health programs that social workers, case workers can provide. We need early education programs, and we need job programs for our communities. And I know that this is stuff that a lot of us on this board would agree with, but they say yes, but the budgets are tight and we don't have money. Well, let's start looking for money. I have a great place where we can start looking. Let's look at the closet of police toys that they have. Why don't we take some of that? And we have cash for guns programs all the time. Let's have the cops do a cash for guns program. Turn that in for school textbooks, for community programs, for more community centers. Let's open vacant buildings and bring in job programs for our community instead of terrorizing us and building mistrust. And I think that's where we need, and that's where this movement is moving towards, and that's where the connection between the legal process and the emotion that is real and the emotion that the community is feeling can have a connection. And I think that's sort of one point of that, we shouldn't run away from that emotion either. Like it's frustrating that this meeting is long, but it had to be designed like this. This meeting could have had voices of the community from the very beginning. We've heard Chief Dotson speak before. He comes and does slideshows to this room all the time. But when there's community members that are hurting and in pain, we should step up and we should listen to them first. And not just today, but tomorrow and 2 weeks from now and months down. We should be in the community hearing from them and taking leadership from them. So I think that's the question is that and something that I'm learning and very, very excited about is the leadership is that, a lot of them are not here right now because they're out actually doing stuff, which is great. But the youth in this community is something that we cannot be afraid of, and that you need to take advantage of and listen to, because they are willing to do stuff and they are willing to act. And if you all don't respond to that and listen to them, they'll make you listen. And the system is not going to enjoy that. And that could be a really good thing. So I was saying that you have an opportunity as this board to let's take away and examine that budget of the police militarization, examine the police and stop that and curb that, invest in our communities and listen to our youth, because that's where it is. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Ridgway. Mike Ridgway.
Ridgeway?
Encouraged that it is
That you?
a multicultural group of people out here. And that's what I went out now the first few days. And that's what I-
I'm going to turn sideways when I speak. And I think I've got a sympathetic audience over here, and I hope I have one here. But my name is Mike Ridgway, and my Twitter handle is Mike Tango Romeo, all spelled out MikeTango-ROMEO. I am an activist, 55 years old I just became. I bounce from cause to cause, and I bounce to causes where there is some hope of actually accomplishing something. I was a staffer for Khan Academy. Does anybody know what Khan Academy is? Okay. My focus when I was part of Khan Academy, and I couldn't get them to take me seriously because I didn't live in Silicon Valley, I lived in St. Louis. And I was trying to say we need to do something to really focus on African American students. And before that happened, my position was phased out. Now I serve as a member of the staff of Computer Village. If anybody knows what that is, in the St. Louis area, it is an almost all African American not-for-profit which teaches technology to the underserved in the St. Louis area. I hope to turn that organization into an organization which will serve underserved persons in the entire country, not just the St. Louis area. I am the only Caucasian member of a 30-member staff. The founder of that organization, Don Holt, 73, former Xerox sales executive, wonderful man. And I haven't worked lately. I was working in Florissant with kids that I believe were from Ferguson. I was in the barber shop at Ferguson the other night, and one of the clients in the store knew one of the kids. His name was Don Carter, in my class, where we had 40 kids teaching them computer skills. And when people talk about the impression that the news media gives of what black youth are in the world today, it is totally tragic that it is so true. These 40 kids, most of whom were African American, my colleague, who was the person that was training me as a new teacher, he was very emphatic that these kids were some of the best kids he'd ever worked with, home training like he had never seen. So that's an issue that I would have loved to have been working with more, but we don't have the funding to keep me employed. So I have been basically with a lot of free time on my hands since August 9th. And I saw what happened to Michael Brown, and I heard the story, and I decided to become, my role was going to be to go into Wikipedia and to be an editor on the story about Michael Brown. And as it turns out, I also tried to lobby the all-white, I do believe, Wikipedia editing pool that I'm working with to write an article about Kajim Powell. And I appreciate those of you that have taught me today how to pronounce his name, because I haven't been able to figure that out until today, okay? And my white co-editors do not believe the Kajim Powell case is notable enough to give it its own article. I would hope that someone in this room has a differing opinion. Anybody can be a Wikipedia editor, but not for everything. What they did on the Michael Brown article is they said, if you haven't got a certain amount of background in Wikipedia, you can't edit anymore, and they protected it from new editors. Well, guess who got scraped out of the process when that happened? The people who got scraped out were the African American editors. And I have remained virtually the only voice of black America in the reporting of the Michael Brown story. And there is so much that I cannot put into that article because the news media has simply dropped the analysis that should be going on. We now have an audio recording that shows that there were 6 shots fired, then a space of 4, a 3-second pause, and then 4 shots were fired. We have an autopsy that shows that Michael Brown was hit 6 times. We have Dorian and the police and even this woman named Josie who was just making stuff up from a fake Facebook page that has been debunked by little green footballs, and she's actually quoted by police in Ferguson as saying that her story is Darren's story. It's been completely debunked, but they still stand by this, so the Josie account continues. But even Josie, everyone agreed that a shot was fired at the car, so that's 1. Everyone agrees that after the 3-second pause, 4 shots were fired. That's 5. I'm part of Khan Academy, and I want people to learn how to do simple math, and when I add 4 plus 1, and I get 5, I'm like, wait a minute, there's still a positive number left if I'm trying to get to 6 on the number line. Okay? So, excuse me, it is plain as day from the audio recording and the autopsy that it is absolutely true that Darren Wilson fired shots at Michael Brown as he was running away. And yet, he is not charged with crimes. I am the person that found, thanks to Daily Costs and Little Green Footballs, the actual article in the New York Times where the New York Times got an internal source within the police department from Ferguson to admit that shots were fired at Michael Brown as he was running away. But they claimed that no shots hit him. But that claim was made before we had the audio recording. And now it's plain as day that in that 3 seconds when he turned around and the 4 shots came at him, that there's not enough. So back to Kajim Powell. It is outrageous that we even talk about a civilian review board in the case of Kajim Powell. The video is incontrovertible. Now, what I have discovered as I try to explain to people in the barbershop the white perspective is that there are 2 completely different ways of looking at police shootings. And I have a friend in Utah who is a policeman, and as soon as I sent him the Kajim Powell video, do you know what I got back? Anybody want to guess the 2 words he sent back to me? Somebody said them today. Are you still here? Righteous shoot. Immediately were the words that came back. But what did the black bystanders on the scene that day, what did they say? What did the black bystanders in Canfield Green Apartments say? They all said, unnecessary. And I dare say that most of you, when you think about, in fact, I even understand that Antonio French takes this position, that the killing of Kajim Powell was justified. But that's the white perspective. That's the police apologist perspective. The black perspective is that it was unnecessary. And I speak of the black and white because I have 700 white Facebook friends, and I can't get just about one of them to cry a tear for Kajim Powell or for Michael Brown. And I haven't met any African Americans that aren't crying a tear for those people. So I'm sorry to put it in terms of black and white. Let's call it blue and white, okay? There's the black perspective and there's the blue perspective. And the blue perspective is an ass, to quote that famous person. Now I'll wrap up by just talking about Solzhenitsyn. Solzhenitsyn, you can find this article, if you tweet me, everything I've talked about, I can send you great detailed information because I know I'm taking too long. But Solzhenitsyn actually talked about the Stalinist regime. And he talked about how Stalin took over the Soviet Union, what was Russia. And they did it by just perpetual oppression, where the people were so much in fear that they just sat in their apartments when they could hear the secret police coming at night, taking people away, and they just sat there and let them take their neighbors away. And I have said to people, I do not believe that the people of Ferguson would have allowed the KGB to just come and take them away. But we are at the point in the United States where it does appear that, just like Solzhenitsyn said, we had nothing to lose by ambushing them in the hallways, bringing out our meat axes, using pokers, using whatever we had. We had nothing to lose because otherwise we were going to go into the concentration camps and we were going to be tortured and starved to death and murdered. And that's what happened to us. And Solzhenitsyn, as hopefully most of you know, was in fact in such a place. The United States, if we do not fire and criminally prosecute the people who killed Kajim Powell, then we are a Stalinist regime. And I would hope that those of you who want this to change would communicate with me so that we can continue to press for the kind of change that clearly nobody has thought was necessary up to this point. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sixella Yakin? How about Carl Levinson?
Please keep in the context of what I'm going to talk about. I'm talking about Mike Brown and I'm talking about Kajim Powell. I'm one of the earliest software engineers on earth. My family is one of the founding families of the software industry. When I got started, there was maybe 1,000 computers in the world, and I was a little 12-year-old whiz kid in Indianapolis at the Bell Labs there where they made all the telephones. So I go way back in software, and I'm going to geek out a little bit, but I'm talking about Mike Brown, and I'm talking about Kajim Powell. we've had two instances. I went to high school in St. Louis. It's a privileged high school. I'm from Indianapolis, but I've twice come over here. Now, I was here the night they shut down Occupy, just a few blocks from here. And we missed an opportunity with Occupy. Occupy and Ferguson are kind of like America's Tiananmen. I speak Chinese quite well. I was in Beijing, at Beijing University, 4 years before Tiananmen, so I'm one of the earliest white guys in Beijing. I can read the newspaper in Chinese just fine. When we pass up the opportunity of Ferguson, or the opportunity of Occupy, to have this conversation about race, we pass up our own Tiananmen. We just are crushing it like the Chinese crushed Tiananmen. And I'm gonna wind back into a little geekiness. My field is, as I've been doing it for 42 years, I'm actually what's called a semantic protocol design engineer. These folks are at the deepest constitutional level of the internet. So you can think of me as one of the top internet constitutional scholars in the world. What's going on in my field is called decentralized authority. And if you look back to the time when newspapers didn't understand the internet was coming, and they sort of stood by, they had the jobs boards, they were monster.com, and they dropped the ball. The government is, and I want to briefly say, I know you guys are in the trenches. I know Antonio's working hard. And I know you guys are unappreciated and that you're working hard for the community. I'm not an anarchist, bomb thrower. But government is in the same spot. When the newspaper sat by and the internet came, and this decentralized authority stuff is coming, where it's heading, there's 10, 15,000 programs out there. They're doing Bitcoin and stuff like that. And there's even a lot of fork your own society stuff working on this kind of Bitcoin stuff. Where it's heading is that anyone's going to be able to roll their own government. Your GitHub is where all the code in the world resides. And when you have an open source project, anyone can go in there and do a pull on GitHub and fork the code. You can make Linux, Debian, and so on. You're going to be able to fork your own government down the road. That's where this is all going. And a community like Ferguson is going to be able to say, we're going to roll out our own, we're going to get 20,000 people together and fork our own and make another government. But it's going to get real crazy because there's going to be 255 police jurisdictions in St. Louis, and every one of these little forks is going to have a police jurisdiction. But you know what? That's going to be better. That chaos is going to be temporarily better than what we got now because we have corruption at the top. And we're not getting to these solutions because we don't listen to our own Tiananmens. We crush them instead. And we will have to go through a period of that chaos to reassemble central government again, but based on open source, if that makes sense. So, sorry about geeking out there for a second, but unless you guys fight this corruption or fight that they're not listening to these black folk, the internet will wave over you. Government will be as irrelevant as we start forking and rolling our own governments. And I'm not talking about anarchy, I'm just talking about that's what's going to happen when the internet waves over government. So one last thing, we actually live in a world of abundance and we're squandering it. The future is very bright actually. So it's not all bad out there. Folks are working hard, we all care, I know you all care. We just need to get onto this wonderfulness that we can build. That's it.
Thank you.
Erica Brooks.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Brooks. I do freelance media photography, and I just wanted to ask a few questions about the community civilian board that you're going to have, as far as first of all, the qualifications that the person is going to need. Who are you going to actually choose? How are you going to choose, and what do they have to know? Are they going to be from the state and, from the city and the county, or just the city? You want me to stop there because I have some more questions? I don't want to keep asking the questions. Do you want me to?
I think, first of all, it's all under, it's being built right now.
Right.
It's to focus on the city itself, because other municipalities run their own police departments, and we don't have any say over that. And there will be, when that is finalized, it will be introduced as a board bill here, and there will be a public hearing, and that information will be a component of the bill that comes out, and people will be able to scrutinize it and then ask questions in regard to that specific product.
Now, to respond to that, being that Ferguson is in the county and the city as well as the state and federal government was involved or is involved in what's going on out there, I think that it should be a combined effort. So when it does appear again, it won't be a thing trying to figure out who can be on the board to make it better. I think that it shouldn't be a city, because that's where the separatism come in at, where we just focusing on the city. But see, the thing about it is the county and everybody else came together in order to be a force with the situation out there. So I think that should be one of the qualifications, that it should be a city and a county deal as far as involving St. Louis, not just the area, centralized area. And then I want to know how long that person was going to serve on that board, and if there's going to be a time limit, and what's going to cause that person to be kicked off that board, and what are they going to have to do in order to be terminated, or will there be a limit for that, or criteria to be kicked off if they're not doing what they should be doing? And that leads me to ask, who's going to be monitoring that board to say if they're doing their job and not just sitting there holding up a spot, saying, okay, well, I have this position, and, I think that we're, discussing it, not discussing, but it being effective as a board member to make sure that those voices of the community are being heard, and that the aldermen and whoever else is, the police, are doing their job to actually listen to the voices of the people in both the city and the county. Because I think if it was separated in the beginning where it was, where, the city said, well, we're not getting involved, but when they did get involved, I think that was a point where all of this, when you come to the table, we sit down together, the county and the city should be sitting together to make sure that everybody's right is looked at, not just the city's rights. And then how much power will the people's input have? It's one thing to do like people doing here today, you all sitting there and you listening to input, but how much power will that board's input have? Will they just be a sitting board to just, okay, well, we hear y'all voices, you represent your ward or whatever, but how much power will those people have? Can you all answer that? I mean, even though you have a board together at this point, how much power will they have? How much power will their voice have as a people?
Terry, you want to address those?
How much power would the Civilian Review Board have?
Yes.
It would have the authority to accept complaints from members of the public who have alleged complaints about misconduct by members of the police force. They will have the power, as we're constructing it now, to look into that, to make inquiry, to investigate it, and to make their findings back to the chief and to even this Board of Aldermen. Now, the members, as we're shaping it right now, would serve 4 years in staggered terms, because there would be 7 districts created, where they would be selected from. All the people can make recommendations. The mayor will make appointments. So there's a interrelationship between this Board of Aldermen and the mayor in the appointing of these members. There was another question that you asked about. They could be relieved of duty if they violate the rules and regulations created by the board itself, and if they violate the confidentiality agreement that they will have to make as a part of being a member of the board. They have to make an annual report. That annual report talks about their functioning, their duties, the things that they have done, their recommendations. And so in that, they actually make both quarterly and annual report. And in that way, they can be monitored to make sure that they are functioning and taking care of their duties and responsibilities. So there are several types of checks and balances in there to make sure that they function well.
Now, on this board, will you have youth on that board? You know, will they be non-political people? Because, you know, you have political people already on the board.
Right.
Will you have youth from different age levels on that board? Or will they just be somebody, you know, and then look at who is going to actually pick and choose, or will it be a collaborative effort to say, hey, we want this person? And how will you?
But please keep in mind that this is still being shaped. And so the person has to be a resident of the city, and they have to be of voting age. So there can be there, and it's supposed to represent the diversity of the city. So that's both in gender, race, and age.
Well, like I said, once again, I think you should reconsider the city thing, because this is happening in the county.
Yeah, we don't have any, that's a jurisdiction, we don't have jurisdiction over the county.
I totally understand, but I think you should sit down with the people, with that, you know, with the people that's, you know, like Charlie Dooley or whoever's gonna be the executive director out there. I think you should be sitting down with them at this point, since people sat down with them in order to get the National Guards out there, in order to get, you know, the different municipalities, you know, the police from the different municipalities, from Eureka and everywhere else, you know, to go out there and be military. I think they should sit down to the table at this point and learn how to create peace in the city and the county. It's not a political thing. I mean, I understand, I hear all these stories on TV about, you know, well, if we combine, you know, our money's gonna be taken and we're gonna have to share, you know, so like that. But at this point, we're talking about lives. We're not talking about just money. So I think if you know, and then just say, for instance, okay, just sit down and you think about, you saying city now. Now, what if somebody come into this city and they're not following the rules and don't know the rules that you set for your city? But if you combine it as a city and a county, everybody's gonna know this is the one rule that we have all together. It's one rule. You know, it's not a this or that. You can totally understand across the board.
Right.
This is how our police staff, you know how they have, you know, they ask for information from a national level.
Right.
You know, on a national level, this is what you do. When you come to St. Louis, because people, no, they come here and they visit. They don't know what county and city is. They don't know where it ends or begins. But if you have a collaborative board sitting down and you talk to your executive director, because, you know, I know it was I forgot where I was at, but they were saying that in some places, it's some points in your government where you all do collaborate, and from a county and a city perspective. And I think at this point, since you've lost some lives, you've had a media bombed with tear gas, you've had people hit with with rubber bullets and stuff like that. I think that there should not be in anybody's mind where we're going to separate this to a city or county deal. It should overall be looked at as lives. How can we save lives and keep people safe from everywhere? So even though we're sitting here in the city hall, I think that just like they took that meeting last night to a church, didn't have anything to do with Ferguson, but you all maybe collaborate. I don't know if you want to talk here, in the middle of city and county, borderline, whatever it is. But I think you need to, you know, because you have babies, like they said, you have young people out here that's looking for direction. And if you see separation, that's another point of separation. You're talking about black and white, but when we bleed red. You know what I'm saying? So I think we should, you know, not we, because I'm not part of that board, but I think you all, as leaders, you know, should look past the point of Democrat, Republican, 7th Ward, 6th Ward, 25th Ward. You should look at St. Louis, not St. Louis City, not St. Louis County, but as one. And when you come together with that unity, people understand across this world that somebody won't change. And like the young lady was saying earlier, change, it can cause some issues, stir up some stuff, but if it's changed for the better, to make sure that we're safe as people, I think you should come together at that table for peace and not just military. And then going to that point of being militarized, you know, I want to ask, at what point in this civil war, because it's a war, when you got some tear gas blowing and some bullets flying, at what point in this situation did they feel like they needed to have a military tactic used? What did the people do out there in the city or county or whatever? What did they do? Was it too many numbers out there? Or was it I mean, you had enough municipalities and police out there to take care of whatever you want to take care of. But then when you bring, like the young lady was talking about, some 10, 30 or whatever, where you had to use your military equipment, at what point in that war did you feel like, was it a time limit that was about to come up and say, hey, we better use this while we got this chance, and we got some looters out there, so we want to show them in the world that we got force. At what point in time was that thought to say, well, we're going to do this right now? You know, and then I want to look at where did they have the training? Where was the training? Before they pull this equipment out, where did they train at? You know?
Erica, we all have questions about that program.
I mean, I totally understand, but like I say, this just something I want to put out there because it has not been talked about.
Yeah.
It's just been, you know, we saw these tanks and we saw this smoke and we saw bullets flying and we saw people crying, innocent people just trying to exercise their First Amendment right to have freedom of speech. And then, like I said, at what point in time did they feel like they had to use some military force, you know, and what number of people that they had to have are determined to say, hey, well, we need some military, we need National Guards out here.
Literally,
You know.
what was the trigger?
What was it? You know, and the last thing I have to say is, who is profiting from all of this corruption? Somebody's profiting, because if it was a thing of trying to find a solution, it would have been done a long time ago, because, I mean, everybody, you know, you can look at, you know, facts and look at video and have some common sense to see when somebody's been shot senselessly. But then you, like some people said earlier, you got media that's rising and falling, but not showing the good things that's happening. You know, where they actually had community service being done all over that place throughout those tear gas moments and bullets flying. You have people coming from around this world, not just the country, but around this world, coming to this place, giving food, giving clothes, giving whatever you need in order to have peace. You know, you're talking about patriotism. It wasn't even about patriotism. It was about love. It was about love for people, not for just a flag. It was about, I'm talking about people giving money, giving whatever they needed to make sure that people were living good in Ferguson, because they wanted justice and they wanted to end. But then, like I said, you had the media that was riding the negative side of it, and it just brings me back to, and this question I want people to rest. I want to rest on their minds, because somebody is profiting from all this corruption, and I think that they need to stop. They need to stop and look at how many other lives are they going to sacrifice? Okay. Okay, all right, thank you. But like I said, those are the different things that questions that I want to bring up, because, you know, sometimes those things are not brought up, and I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank all of you for participating today. We have, in the last month, seen a lot of press, and it's been raising in the public consciousness that there is a major problem. And so we are trying to talk about it, to figure out solutions, and we appreciate your participation. I'm very thankful to my colleagues for staying here for this length of time and listening to all this, because we have major investment in our communities, and we want our communities to be successful. So thank you for your participation in this process.
Terrific.